Flawless, my dear.
Gossip Girl set in the 19th century, with gorgeous ball gowns and scandalous romances. This is exactly the kind of Netflix content we needed to get through the winter.
I wish to be entertained.
If you haven't watched Bridgerton yet, you'll probably want to binge it before diving into this video, so we don't spoil any of the drama. Bridgerton was a huge risk for Netflix. Filming on the series started in July 2019 and wrapped in February 2020, just before the pandemic hit. That's almost 9 months of shooting, which is pretty long for a TV show. Combine that with the incredible sets and literally thousands of costumes, and the drama-filled 19th century romance could have easily been a disaster. Thankfully, Shonda Rhimes was behind the breathtaking TV series, and here's how the huge undertaking all came together behind the scenes. Like Gossip Girl, Bridgerton gets its inspiration from a book series. It was inspired by Julia Quinn's best-selling novels, the first of which is fittingly titled The Duke and I. Quinn is incredibly popular, with about 10 million books in print in the US alone. When approached with the idea for the show, she jumped at the chance to give Shonda creative control of the series. She read the script as a consultant, but wasn't involved in the writing. As for Shonda, she knew immediately after reading the series that she wanted to turn the burning hot romance into her next big television event. The thing about romance novels is they don't get taken very seriously. But by providing a luxe series with intriguing character depth, Shonda is bringing the steamy romance to the forefront of entertainment. But you might be surprised to know that Shonda wasn't the official creator or showrunner of the series. She passed that torch over to Chris Van Dusen, who previously worked with her on Grey's Anatomy and Scandal. The Bridgerton books follow the 8 alphabetically named Bridgerton siblings. While the concept stayed relatively the same, there were a few changes made to make the series more modern. For one, Shonda wanted a 21st century audience to see themselves in these characters, so diversity was very important, particularly in casting a Black Queen Charlotte. And though the series and show are set in the Regency era, neither the show's creators nor Quinn were very concerned with historical accuracy. They wanted to avoid the typical historical romance tropes, which meant giving their female characters agency despite them having to try and conform to 19th century society. But even if perfect historical accuracy wasn't the main concern, transporting the audience to the 1800s definitely was. In order to get the actors fully immersed in the Regency romance, the cast spent 6 weeks in a boot camp getting familiar with things like horseback riding, Regency history, etiquette, and dancing. This is where the cast learned more about their characters, like how the Featherington sisters are meant to be like the Kardashians of the 19th century, while the Bridgertons are more like the Kennedys. You know, new money versus old money. Penelope is kind of like the Chloe of the family, while Lady Portia Featherington is a Kris Jenner-like momager. With a 6-week boot camp followed by more than 6 months of filming, it's no surprise that the cast are now incredibly close. Phoebe Dynevor, who plays Daphne, thinks of Jonathan Bailey, who plays Anthony, as an older brother, and Claudia Jessie, who plays Eloise, is now best friends with NICOLA COUGHLAN, who plays Penelope. Some other interesting secrets from the stars are that NICOLA COUGHLAN was working in a doctor's office before she landed her role. Golda Rosheuvel didn't originally audition for the role of Queen Charlotte, but for another unspecified role that she didn't get. And Jonathan Bailey was on his way to Coachella when he heard the news that he would be Lord Anthony Bridgerton. As for being starstruck, the entire cast did freak out about one cast member, though they didn't even get to film scenes with her. The true scene stealer, even though she doesn't actually appear on camera, was the one and only Julie Andrews, who voices Lady Whistledown. Now, you're not the only one who's wondering what it's like for the Bridgerton stars to film those steamy love scenes.
Should we go into the bedroom?
But surprisingly, they're not nearly as awkward as we thought they would be. You might have noticed that Daphne's romantic scenes with Simon are almost entirely shot from her perspective, to give the show a more feminist lens. As for Phoebe and Regé-Jean Page's on-set chemistry, Phoebe said the extensive preparation ahead of filming played a large part. They actually worked with a coordinator to help develop a behind-the-scenes relationship with one another that would translate well on screen. So when it came to that scene in episode 6, where Daphne and Simon get hot and heavy in the library, they weren't too nervous, which is good, considering that was actually the first scene the pair ever filmed together. All of the most romantic scenes are a huge deal to the film and are completely choreographed. They'd take at least half a day to shoot, and while the actors were all exhausted by the end, they never once felt uncomfortable. While Bridgerton is probably not the kind of show you'd want to watch with your parents, the stars managed not to be too embarrassed by their families watching.
I think the most horrifying thing is when your parents aren't horrified. Like, you're sitting there and you're like, oh.
Phoebe admitted she warned hers and had to make sure to distance herself from the character of Daphne so she wouldn't feel too embarrassed, while Regé joked that he would rather keep it a surprise. As for the real challenging scenes, though, they had nothing to do with romance. The most difficult ones were actually those involving horses.
Me and Phoebe particularly were very happy and were confident with our horses until they said action.
Action!
For those working behind the scenes, creating the costumes was incredibly difficult. The show has 7,500 outfits over 8 episodes, and it took 5 months to make them all. Ellen Mirojnick was the show's costume designer, and you might know her work from The Greatest Showman. Daphne alone wears 93 dresses throughout the first season to create unique looks for the characters that blend modern and Regency-era fashion. The designer created mood boards and used the cut and color of clothing to distinguish the sophisticated Bridgertons from the more superficial Featheringtons. Mirojnick also used a lot of embellishments to liven up the costumes, and you'll notice a lot of layered jewelry, tulle, and lace. They had a whole team in charge of finding the perfect embellishments to make these costumes perfectly over the top. This also meant that each look was incredibly complicated, especially Queen Charlotte's. She has a different wig and dress in every scene, and sometimes she was even wearing 2 wigs to appear even more flamboyant and exaggerated. These looks often included things like feathers and pearls, and tons of petticoats. It took half an hour to put on the Queen's costumes, and it took 2 people to help her get in and out of those double corseted outfits. And speaking of corsets, the ones for the series were designed by an icon, Mr. Pearl. He's the best corset designer in the business and has done looks for Beyoncé, Madonna, and the Kardashians. Another aspect that took as much work as costuming was choreography. The dances were so intricate and specifically tailored to each character, thanks to choreographer Jack Murphy. The dances intertwined modern movement and time period appropriate style. The dancing was actually the part that made Phoebe Dynevor the most nervous, since she says she was never much of a dancer. Thankfully, the choreographer had their backs, and it ended up being a great bonding experience for the entire cast. Creating those massive ballroom scenes was a huge challenge for the set design crew as well. There were around 200 people working behind the scenes to make everything look perfect, but it was pretty hard transforming modern mansions into 19th century homes. One of the carpenters on set reportedly dedicated 4 months just to making time-appropriate fireplaces and windows. So, those are all the details behind Season 1. But what about Season 2? Will there be one? And what will it be like? Well, there's no confirmation yet, but showrunner Chris Van Dusen is definitely up for a second season. Since there are 8 siblings, each of whose story is central to different novels in Quinn's series, making more seasons is definitely in the cards. It seems even more likely thanks to a recent listing from Production Weekly, which shows that Season 2 is set to start filming in Uxbridge, England in March 2021. The next book in the series is titled The Viscount Who Loved Me and focuses on Anthony's love story. So if we do get a second season of this new drama we're all obsessed with, we can probably expect to see a lot more of Anthony, and definitely another look at Daphne and the Dukes blossoming life together. Would you like to see 8 different seasons, each focusing on a different Bridgerton? Let us know in the comments down below. Don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed this video and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching!